Hi, so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about if statements and operators. So we're going to go ahead and create a new class in our hello package. So to your class, we're going to call it if operators. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and click finish. Oh, we're going to do our public static void main. Okay, so we have our class here. We need to go ahead and import our scanner since we want to get some user input. So we're going to go import Java util scanner. Okay, so that's going to be our scanner class. Now we're going to go in and define our scanner. So we're going to put scanner scr is a new scanner, and it's going to take as input system in with a capital S, system. Okay, so we have our scanner. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and define a couple of variables. All right, so we're going to have a double, and that's going to be A, and we're going to have a double B. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and get some input from the user. So we're going to go okay, so we're going to go ahead and get some user feedback. So we have system out, and we're going to just print a prompt. So we're going to go ahead and print ln, and we're going to go ahead and print the prompt. What is your favorite number? Your favorite number. Okay, so we're going to print what is your favorite number. We're also going to have a prompt of what is your second favorite number. Okay, but after we ask the first prompt, we need to get their input, right? So we're going to go, we're going to say A is equal to our scanner, right? So we're going to say our scanner. And we're going to say next double. Okay, now this is going to make it so that if they don't put a number, an actual digit, we're going to get a runtime error. But we're not going to handle that now. We'll learn to do that later. Okay, so we have A is our next double. Okay, and then so that's their favorite number, and B is going to be their second favorite number. Okay, so I copied and pasted, right? Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and print out, and I'm copying and pasting here. So I Control C, Control V. So your favorite number is, and then we're just going to concatenate the string. So one thing about Java. Okay, so one easy thing about Java is that if I concatenate a string, that concatenate just means to add two strings together. So basically when I take this string, your favorite number is, and I concatenate a variable like A, which we know is a double, Java actually will convert that double to a string and then put the two strings together. Okay, so we don't have to worry about what's called casting the variable as a different variable type. So we could cast our double A to another variable type of a string, and then okay, so we have our message that's going to go out. So we're just going to print out your favorite number is A, and then Control C, Control V for our next line, and we're going to say your second favorite number is B. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to use some operators. So let's take a look at a couple of our operators here. Okay, so these are our math operators. Now I know we went over these before. We're just going to kind of rewrite a couple of these. Okay. So we're going to use the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, the modulus. The modulus you might not be familiar with. So modulus is actually will give you the remainder. So if I divide B divided by A, B modulus A will give 0 in this case, okay, because we're in our example on this page, we're saying that A is 10 and B is 20. Okay, so the modulus divides the left-hand operator by the right-hand operator. In this case, it's B divided by A, so it's 20 divided by 10. That would give us 0, right, because it divides in evenly. Okay, So let's go ahead and do those three. Okay. So we're going to say b a times b is equal to, and then we can actually just put in the actual math right in the system out print. So or the print line right here. Okay, so we can go ahead and just put that right in. So we're just going to go ahead and add in our other math, right? So actually, sorry, we did plus first, right? Okay, and to separate these math operations out, what we can do is we can just put them into parentheses. So in this case, we're going to put the parentheses in. That will make Java know that, hey, do this operation first. It will know to do it to do the math operation first. Okay. All right. So there we have it. So let's go ahead and test our test phrases here. So we're going to use a modulus. Okay. So we're going to say the result of the sum of A plus B, we can say the difference of A minus B, you can say the product of A times B, the quotient of A divided by B, and the remainder of A modulus B. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. So we go ahead and run it. What is my favorite number? My favorite number is 5. My second favorite number is 2. And there we get it. Okay, so it goes as and prints out A plus B, the difference, A minus B, the product, quotient, and remainder. Okay, so those are our basic math operators, right? Okay, but let's take a look at some more operators. So let's go back and we are going to go ahead. Those are our arithmetic. We can also increment. Now, in general, we'd use these on counters, but let's go ahead and use those for right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and do 2 more doubles. Let's do okay, so the incrementing operators are going to affect the actual variable, right? So we're going to go ahead and by affect the variable, I mean if we apply the operator to the variables, right? If we go B plus plus, let's say the result of B plus plus okay, is B plus plus, the result of B minus minus. Okay, so we're basically going to add 1 from B and then subtract 1 from B. Okay, all right, so in this case, if B was 5, the result of B plus plus, as soon as I do this, B is going to be 6, right? Well, let's just show this. So we're going to go B plus plus. Okay. And let's just go ahead and concatenate these so you can kind of see what's going on. So we're going to increment b by doing b++, and then we're going to de-increment b by doing b minus minus. Okay, in both cases, we're just going to go ahead and print out b only. All right? So that's going to show us the operation of those two increment operators, right? The increment and the de-increment. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to some different types of operators. So up to this point, our operators have been kind of math operators, right? They've, they've incremented a number, they've done some mathematical operation to a number, and there's lots of other math, not operators, but there's lots of, Java's full of things you can do to numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look at a different type of operators. So these are relational operators. And these operators, the arithmetic operators say, they give a statement. They say add a plus b, or add b divided by a. Or you could say, they say, they're going to assign a value, return a value of something. Okay, the relational operators, you should think of these as asking a question. So for example, the first operator is going to check if two are equal. So this double equal sign is asking the question, returns true. Okay, so these all result in a Boolean value. Okay, so it's either true or false. It's asking the question, is A equal to B? If the answer is yes, it returns a value of true. If the answer is no, it returns a value of false. Okay, so think of these relational operators as asking a question, and the answer to that question is a Boolean value of true or false. Okay, so if these operators are going to ask a question, then and they come back with a true or false, we can use them in what are called if statements. And if statements are the primary way that we produce logic inside of a program. Okay, so the general format when you're typing out these if statements, especially when you're first starting out, it's useful to put in the skeleton of the if statement. So we go if, open close parentheses, open close curly brace. Okay, notice when I do my open curly brace, then hit enter, Eclipse is going to write the second curly brace. Okay, now in every if statement, whatever is between the parentheses is going to end up being either true or false. Okay, so it's going to be either true or false. No matter how long the statement, no matter what's in here, it's always going to end up resulting in a true or a false. Okay, so that's the most important thing to remember with an if statement. Okay, so if the condition, so we say if this condition is true, whatever that statement might be, we could say, then we can say that anything between, any code between the curly braces is going to happen. All right, so we can put something like the statement was true. Okay, so the statement was true. Now what we can also do, if say that statement turns out to be false, a different thing will happen. So we can say the statement was false. Okay, now what Eclipse is telling us is that this is dead code. Okay, so basically why it's saying that is that if we just say false in this condition, then this will always be false, and that means that the code between the curly braces will never be executed. Okay, so these two are kind of the opposite. If this statement is true, this code would always be executed. If this statement is false, then the code between these curly braces of this if statement would never be executed. Okay, so let's go ahead and play our code here to run our code. Okay, so notice that we get this statement is true, but we don't see this part of the code that this statement is false. And that's because it's in an if statement where the condition of the if statement is false. Okay, so let's take a look at, we're going to go ahead and delete this just so we don't have this ugly error or warning message looking at us. So we're going to go ahead and write out some if statements for A and B. Okay, so we put in the skeleton here, and we're going to say if A is greater than B, Okay, and we're going to put in the statement. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put in the statement A was greater than B. Okay, so so that's our first if statement there. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a few more. Okay, so now we're going to do a less than statement. So if it's a less than, if A is less than B, it's going to print out A is less than B. Okay. We can go if A is less than or equal to B. Or we can go, and just the same way, we can go if A is greater than or equal to B. Okay, so those are kind of our basic math comparators there. Okay, so we have our basic comparators here. Now, but let's take a look at this code a little bit closer. Let's go ahead and move out the A is less than, or sorry, the A is less than or equal to, and A is greater than or equal to. Okay. So now these two, so a number could occupy both of these, right? So if A was 5 and B was 5, then that would satisfy. So if A is greater than or equal to B, so if 5 is greater than or equal to 5, this would be true, and it would print out our line here. Same way if A was 5 and B was 5, if A is less than or equal to B, if 5 is less than or equal to 5, that would be true, and it would print out here. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add our equals operator. Okay, but let's look at this group of statements here. All right. So we have 3 if statements, and the problem here is that we know for a fact that only one of these can be true. Okay. If A is equal to B, it is not greater than or less than B. If A is greater than B, it's not equal to or less than. If A is less than B, it's not greater than or equal to B. So only one of these statements would possibly be executed. So now what we can do in Java is we can create this kind of multi-case if statement, right? So if is one case, so this is our first case, right? If A is equal to B. Our second case is if A is greater than B. And our third case is if A is less than B. Well, we can make this more efficient to execute, okay? So we can say else if, okay, so we just add an else if there. And finally, we can put an else if here, okay? And so basically what this will make the program do is that this whole thing will only get evaluated once. All right, so that means that when the program is running, it gets to line 36, it asks the question, is A equal to B? Okay, if the answer is true, say they're both 5, then it executes this statement and skips the rest of the if-else if statement. Okay, if that makes any sense. All right, so only one of these statements could possibly be executed if we're using this if, else if, else if. Okay, and then finally what we could do here, we could have a final one, else. Okay, now it makes no sense in this case, right? Because all numbers are going to be, if we're comparing two numbers, all numbers are going to be equal, greater than, or less than, right? However, what we could do in this case is that we could just put in the else rather than the less than, right? Okay, and I hope you see the logic behind this. All right, so what we can do here, if we wanted to use the full if, else, okay. So first, what would happen when this runs is that on line 36, the program would say, oh, if A is A equal to B, this would become true or false, right? If it's true, then the code inside the curly braces will execute, okay? When that executes, basically the program skips all the way down to line 45. Okay, so it skips all the way to line 45. If this is false, it goes again on to the next one. It tests, is A greater than B? If this one turns out to be false too, it skips this section. And finally, when it gets the else, no matter what, it will, not no matter what, but if it didn't run this code, if this was false, and if the else if was false, then it would run the else. Now you can have as many else ifs as you want. So you could have code that has, 100 else ifs, right, for 100 different cases. Right? You just keep saying else if, else if, else if. If you want a catch-all at the end, okay, so if it doesn't satisfy any of these other conditions, if you want it, okay, it doesn't satisfy anything else, then else. If it doesn't satisfy any of these conditions, then you put in the else, and then it's when it will print out. Okay? So this is your standard if, else statement. All right, and notice that we just took out the less than because we know that all numbers, not all numbers, but all comparisons of two numbers are going to fall into those three categories. All right, so let's go ahead and move on with our operators here. Okay, so we've equals to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And finally, we're going to cover the not equal to. So we're going to go ahead and just add in another if statement. We're going to copy and paste. And basically, we're going to say if A is not equal to B, then we're going to print out A is not equal to B. All right, and that's basically what it's exactly what it sounds like. The exclamation point or the bang is means not. Okay, so A is not equal to B. You could also, is not equal to B. So if we're talking about two numbers, if we're comparing two numbers here, right, is not equal to B. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So we have those are our relational operators. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. So we're going to run it. What is my favorite number? Well, my favorite number is 5. My second favorite number is 3. Okay, so let's see if we got all our statements here. So your favorite number is 5. Your second favorite number is 3. The sum is 8. The difference is 2. The product is 15. The remainder, if I divided 5 divided by 3, is 1.6 repeating. The remainder of 5 divided by 3 is 2. The result of B incremented. So if we take 3 and increment it by 1 is 4. If we take B and increment it by minus 1 is 3. Okay. So basically we went up, made it go up to 4. We took it back down to 3. The statement is true. Remember, we just put an if true, right? So that statement is true. That's this print right here. Okay, and then A is greater than B. That's true because it's 5 is greater than 3. A is not equal to B. That's true. 5 and 3 are not equal. And then A and B, A is greater than or equal to B. Okay, so there are our comparator operators. All right, so let's say that we wanted a more complicated if statement. Okay, so let's say that we want an if statement that's going to check multiple things. Okay, so here's where we start to be able to combine statements. Okay, so logical AND operator. So when we look at these operators, basically we're saying that A is a Boolean and B is a Boolean, right? So we're saying true and true, or true and false, or false and true. And this is an OR. So we're saying A or B. If one or the other is true, then it's true. In this case, A and B both have to be true for it to be true. Otherwise, it is false. And finally, we can put in the not, okay, and then put something in parentheses, and that's going to make it true. Okay, so if this, in this case, it's just going to be the opposite. If A and B, if that turns out to be true, then the result is going to be false. If A and B turns out to be false, then the result is going to be true. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we're just going to cover using the logical operators and or. We're only going to use those on Booleans for now. We can do some experimentation where we said if A and B, if they're just some number, and we say and, if it comes out true or not, or false or not, we could experiment that. For now, we're just going to make sure that we use just with Boolean statements. Okay, and remember, Boolean is just a variable type that is either true or false. All right, that's all that is. All right, so let's make a more complicated if statement using these and. So if and we're going to say A is greater than 2, and B is greater than 5. Okay, so if A is greater than 2 and B is greater than 5, then do something. Then we're going to print out we're just going to go ahead and print that out. A is greater than 2 and B is greater than 5. So what's happening here is there are two Boolean statements happening. Okay, so this, once this gets evaluated, the program runs to line 60, right? And this becomes true or false. So to ask the question, is A greater than 2? Let's say A is 5. This becomes true. Okay. Is B greater than 5? Let's say that B is 6. That becomes true. Then it evaluates this whole statement, true and true. This becomes true. And just like every single if statement, eventually, once the condition is evaluated, it all boils down to true or false. If it's true, then the code inside the curly braces is executed. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. So in this case, oops. In this case, we're going to just paste it back here. A lot of times it's easiest to use internal parentheses to separate these out. In this case, it's not necessary, but things can get kind of confusing, and sometimes it's easier just to use parentheses. That way you kind of know that that's one statement. Okay, so let's use an OR. Okay, so in this case, A is greater than 2 and B is greater than 5. Both of those statements have to be true for this condition to be true and for this to print. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and say OR. Okay, so now what could happen is if A is, let's say that A is 1, so A is greater than 2 is going to be false. B is greater than 5, let's see, B is 6, that's going to be true. So both of those get evaluated first. Then finally we say false or true. Remember, with an OR, only one has to be true, so that ends up being true. Okay, so let's get back to where we were. Okay. Now, finally, what we're going to take a look at now is that these can be combined in any number of ways. Okay, so you have to think of it as kind of like a math equation. All right, so let's take a look at something a little bit more complicated. Okay, so let's say that A has to be greater than 2 and A is less than 6. Okay. Greater than 2 and A is less than 6. B is greater than 5 and B is less than 7. Okay. So now we have kind of this more complicated if statement. All right, and this is where parentheses really come into play here. All right, so basically what you'd want to do is that you want to, if you have statements like this, you want to start using parentheses so that your and statement, or so that your statements execute how you expect them to. So if we want A to be between 2 and 6, so we only want it to be true if A is 3, 4, or 5, right, or greater than 2 and less than 6, or B is greater than 5 and less than 7. Okay, so either one of these statements can be true now, right? And it will print out this number. So if A is between 2 and 6, and B is between, or B is between 5 and 7, then this would print out. Okay. We could also do the same thing. So notice that we have an and statement here, we have an or and an and statement here, and then we have an or between them. Let's make that an and. So now they both have to be true. Okay, so we can make kind of complicated and statements, or and conditions. Sorry, we can make complicated conditions by doing this. So we can check the values of different variables. We can combine those into and statements, and we can print those out. We can make them as conditions to do some code. Now this code is print stuff, right, to system out. It could do, but it could be any code, right? Okay. So those are our logical operators. Okay, finally let's do the not. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the not. And so in this case we go, we're going to say, let's go back up here, and we're going to go ahead and do the not. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's go ahead and do just A is greater than B not. Okay, so let's talk about what the effect will be of this. Okay, so let's put a not, and then in parentheses A is greater than B. Okay, so how will this execute here? All right, so basically what will happen is go from the inside out, just like a math equation, right? So if A is greater than B, that'll end up being true, and then with the not, it just flips it. So basically, if A is greater than B, this will be true, and then it will evaluate the not, and it will end up being false. Okay? Okay, so let's look at that again. So we have our condition in here, right? So A is greater than B. If that is true, let's say A is 6 and B is 3, that would end up being true. Then the not is evaluated, it flips it, it ends up being false, and so this would never execute. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and run our code here and see what happens. Okay, so what's our favorite number? Well, my favorite number is 4, and my second favorite number is 6. Okay. So if we look at our code down here, so A is greater than 2, remember it's 4 and 6, and B is greater than 5. A is greater than 2 or B is greater than 5. A is greater than 2 and less than 6, or B is less than 5 and greater than 5 less than 7. A is greater than 2 and less than 6, and B is greater than 5 and less than 7. Okay, but let's go ahead and run. Let's just take a look at these last two statements here. Let's run them again. Let's say that A is going to be 4 and B is going to be 8. Okay, so notice that now my two statements that pop up are, for here, we only get the or, right? Okay, so in this case, the and doesn't print because remember that both of these statements have to be true. But in this case, when B is 8, this statement evaluates to false, which makes the whole thing evaluate to false, and the system ends up skipping line 77. Okay, so those are our comparative operators. Okay, I hope you're following along. I know it's quite a big set of operators here. Okay, finally, let's look at the assignment operators. So these are just kind of shorthand. They're shorthand versions of the same things that we talked about before. We're just going to go ahead and do just a quick example of how they work. So let's go up here. We're going to hit enter a couple times before our if statements. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to say okay, so a simple assignment operator, we're going to say A is so for example, we're going to say A is equal to B, or let's just do C, okay? So each time here we're going to do, we're going to print out C, okay? And we need to create another variable called C, so we're going to go up and create a double called C, okay, and we're going to print out C, right? Okay. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and do C is equal to A, okay? And then we're going to print out C. Okay, next we're going to go, so now C is equal to A. Okay, now we're going to do C is equal to, so let's go ahead and do this, let's take a look at these other operators here. Okay, so we do the AND assignment operator. If we do C plus equals A, that's equivalent to saying C is C plus A. All right, so basically what we're doing is we're doing, this is just short for this. Okay, so C plus equals A, and C equals C plus A are exactly the same thing. All right, so let's take a look at how these work. Okay, and we're going to just go ahead and print out C every time. So minus equals, multiplication equals. So each one of these is just the same as, writing, so this is the same as writing C equals C plus A. This is the same thing as writing C equals C minus A. This is the same thing as writing C equals C times A. This is the same thing as writing C equals C divided by A. And finally, do the modulus, okay? And this is the same thing as writing C equals C modulus A. Okay? All right, so these are just shorthand. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to change our labels here. C equals C plus A, or C plus equals A. And we're just going to go ahead and change all of our labels here. So C equals C minus A, or C minus equals A. C equals C times A, or C times equals A. And then C equals C divided by A, or C divided equals A. And then finally C modulus A is the same as C equals C modulus A, or C modulus equals A. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and run all this. So our favorite number finally is, our favorite number is 5. Our second favorite number is 3. And we get all of our outputs. Okay. Okay. So those are all of our operators. Congratulations. So you've kind of finished it up, and you now know all of the basic operators for Java. So go ahead and create your sample code, and good luck.